Blackprint. Today, I have my guest, Kira, and we'll be discussing allyship and more. Um, to provide a little bit of background information, I believe that capitalism has had a negative effect on Black mental health, and I believe that better Black mental health begins by defunding the police. And later on in this interview, you will see why I argue that, hopefully. And yeah. Kira, if you want to introduce yourself, you can.
Hey guys, my name is Kira, and I will be doing this interview with Yasmin today.
To start, I'm going to ask, what would you define capitalism? I mean, or like, how would you define capitalism?
Okay, I would define capitalism as being, it's not like a recognized structure, but I think it's an economic structure that puts predominantly white and Asian Americans on top, while it puts Black Americans and Latinx at the bottom due to wealth inequality and generational wealth.
That was a really good answer. I like that. I completely agree with you. It's really what I through my research, I argued that it was basically like capitalism is built off the slaves of Black people, the slaves of Black people, the back of Black people through slavery.
Definitely, it didn't happen overnight. It definitely took a lot of time through history to make that structure so like spaced out like a pyramid. So it definitely just wasn't like, oh, white people just they go to school and then they go to college and then they get a better job and they make money and stuff. It's family generational wealth as well that has to do with it.
Well, it's kind of leads us to our next question since we're already talking about slavery. Do you know what post-traumatic slave syndrome is? And it's okay if you don't, because I didn't know
either. I feel like it's like like events that happened during slavery like still affecting Black mental health now, but you can go ahead and explain it.
It's basically that. It's basically that. And it starts with slavery, and it's the mental breaking of slavery, like the way as today. Because as much as people try to say like slavery happened so long ago, why are you still holding on to something you didn't even go through? But generationally, it still affects us. If you know what I mean.
And it's also a difference because with like families and stuff, like a white family and then like a Black family, like you're gonna have different conversations around certain things because of the past, you know, and things that like your family has told you and passed down to you, and now that's how you're gonna express it to your kids, and then your kids are gonna express it to their kids, and it's just gonna keep going.
This is our next question, which is like, so how do you think that post-traumatic slave syndrome has affected Black mental
health? Well, it's done in a lot of ways, but I could say like how you see yourself in society compared to other people. I think it has affected Black mental health, like how you said that they might not seek out help, like going to doctors and stuff because they're not as trusted, and that's what their family has said. And you can also see the same thing with going to therapy and stuff, like how there's a stigma around it, saying like, oh, they're not actually going to help you, or, you know, like they're just not like as open-minded.
Personally, for me, I think that like the stigma around Black mental health, or just mental health in general in the Black community, has a really negative like, you know, I've heard this plenty of times where it's like you have nothing to be depressed about. You like you have nothing to be depressed about. You have food on the table. You have shoes. You have whatever, and it's like guilt tripping you into thinking that you can't be depressed because you have basic needs. And I feel like that's another way that post-traumatic slave syndrome has affected Black mental health. Also, like with working too. So you're living to work, but you're working to live. If that
makes sense. Yeah. And like the connection we can do now is like is people working so hard until their body starts like falling apart, and they're like overexhausted, and because they have these multiple jobs because they need that money to literally to live.
You know. Question is, how do you feel about like the idea of defunding the police? Like, have you heard of it? And then when you did hear about it, if you have, like, what was your initial reaction, even like maybe like your family's reaction to it, because I know my family had like a interesting point of view about it.
Okay. So I first heard about defunding the police like around last year, around I think the protests started around April, I think. And then around that time is when I first heard the term defunding the police. And I didn't really, I kind of like, it was kind of self explanatory what it means, like taking money away from the police, but like, what? So, like, I learned more, and basically, it's taking money from the police because they have such a high budget, and taking that money and using it towards something else that will actually help the community, because the police have proven multiple times that they're not actually for the community and they're not there to protect and serve. So that money needs to be used towards something else that will actually help. So, like, for example, mental health facilities, or giving police better training to deal with mental illnesses and stuff, because they don't know how to deal with it, and that's why they're killing these people. And that's why some of their money needs to go to different places. But my family's reaction were like, oh, why do they want to take money away from the police when they're doing this and that? And like, I have to have conversations with my family in order for them to understand more means. And they're not saying they need to take all the money away from the police and stuff. They're just saying they need to take a little bit of that big scoop and give it to other places that need it more, that will actually help. You know, those conversations are difficult, but they need to be had.
And initially, I feel like that's also what protects them when we see things like police brutality happen, and they're like, well, why isn't justice being served? And I'm like, well, they're protected by a union that literally says that, like, that protects them in situations like that. Next question, which is like, how did you initially feel about the Black Lives Matter protests that were happening like in the middle of a pandemic? Like, that was a lot of people's arguments.
So first, I saw how George Floyd was murdered, and I saw that, and then it was like an explosion on like social media platforms. My initial reaction was like, I really wanted to do something, because I felt like I couldn't do anything, because we were in a pandemic, and I couldn't just go outside and protest along with everybody else. So I was looking for ways that I could help. So what I did was, there were a lot of petitions and stuff. There was petitions, there were like emails you could send for demanding action. There were calls that you could do to like government officials.
Like, so how did you show your activism without being like the white savior complex?
First of all, one major thing is like not speaking over Black voices, and like me being a white female and being in a white family, it's a lot different from looking at stuff from them being in a Black family. So like I said before, having to have a conversation with my family, because they just use the news to get their information. I feel like that's what I've done, like as an ally, to educate my family so that they're not saying these things. Like, if you're not having conversations with other people, you're a part of the problem.
What do you feel the problem is with saying like Blank Lives Matter, like replacing the Black and the slogan Black Lives Matter with anything else?
So like All Lives Matter is basically just saying White Lives Matter, because the people that are saying All Lives Matter, like, they weren't saying that before Black Lives Matter. They're saying it as like a counter to bring them down. Oh, you think Black Lives Matter, but all lives matter. But when they're saying all lives matter, they're not really including Black lives and Latinx lives and such, and then Blue Lives Matter is saying, like, first of all, blue, like, once you're a police officer, you take off that badge, you're like, and you're walking around on the streets and stuff, nobody knows you're a cop. When you're a Black American, you can't take that off.
And I've heard people say all lives can't matter, or anything else really can't matter until Black Lives Matter. And I honestly, when I hear that, I think about it in a deeper context, and I think like what people are trying to say is Black people are one of the most disrespected, treated inhumanely, treated by, like, you see how Black people are treated in America. So what people are trying to say is, if their lives aren't going to be fixed, nobody else's life that comes after them or before them or whatever the case may be it's almost like you're only as good as your weakest link. Oh, and I want to like make it clear that when we say like Black Lives Matter, we're not saying that no other life matters, because it does. How do you go about understanding your privilege and how to navigate that?
Like, I'm gonna just bring up like a scenario, I guess. So, like, say I'm getting pulled over by the police or something. I'm obviously gonna get a way better treatment than anybody else would because of my skin color and because of that white privilege that I do have. And I have that wherever I go, no matter what, you know? And most people don't have that. So I need to, like, I feel like people don't understand the privilege that they have. And so that it becomes like a dangerous thing.
Let's say that white privilege does not exist. A prime example is literally what happened yesterday.
Yeah.
So let's just
yeah, let's get into it.
That down. At the end of the day, I feel that Black Lives Matter protests did not get violent until police were violent. The protests were definitely peaceful, but the thing about it that's really crazy about the Black Lives Matter protests was that we had a curfew. We cannot be out at a certain time.
Yeah. They had a curfew too, but they definitely didn't do anything.
But they had a curfew to stop the protest, and then on top of that, we were tear gassed, people were beat, people were like arrested, rubber bullets, all this stuff. Then we have yesterday, where we have a group of Trump supporters, because the president.
It wasn't even a group; it was a whole mob.
That was a mob of supporters that.
They didn't really have a cause either.
I don't even really know what the cause is.
I don't know what they thought they were doing.
What was your purpose? And it's like, oh, I don't like you.
Like you ask them, and they're like, "Oh, it's a revolution and blah blah blah."
For protest for Black Lives Matter, we're protesting to not be killed. Like we're protesting for our lives here. This is what we're protesting.
Yeah.
And then we have majority white people. It wasn't all white.
It wasn't even majority. It was literally.
It wasn't all. There was a couple of other people.
Oh yeah, just a little
sprinkle. Categorize them as Trump supporters, and we don't see anything be done to them.
Exactly. Like how were they able to get that far? And they literally draw no weapons out. It was really surprising to see how like not protected like a government building was. When people were protesting, it was like, don't take photos, don't take videos, and if you do, blur out everybody's face before you post it on social media. And that's because they know, because Trump made this tweet thing, and he was like asking people to send him videos and pictures and stuff so that those people could get arrested for what they were doing when they're outside fighting for a real cause that was important to them, and they were getting arrested for it. But then these people literally committing a federal crime were like, it was okay to post pictures and stuff because these people are white and they know that nothing's gonna actually happen to them. And it's only back the blue when they're killing Black people.
I just want to make it clear to, I guess, people who are listening. It's like, it really wears down on Black mental health, and it just wears down on Black people, period. There's people out there who don't think that I deserve the right to live. Whether or not I go to college, get my degree, do this, do that. It's like, at the end of the day, like, I'm a Black woman. Like, that's just what they see me as. It doesn't matter what I have, because at the end of the day, my skin tells a whole different story. It tells their story before I can even open my mouth. And it took George Floyd to wake up the nation. I guess that's what it took. But I think we need to keep on waking up the nation. And we don't need to be doing that by having more deaths. We just need to be heard. To end this discussion today, we talked about capitalism. We talked about post-traumatic slave syndrome. We talked about how that affects Black mental health. We talked about defending the police. We've talked about the treatment of the Black community in America, and allyship, and a lot more. So I want to thank Kira for coming and interviewing today. Clap for Kira right now.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
If you made it this far in this interview, I'm really glad that you did, because we had a really good conversation. So see you next time. Next person will either be my mother or my sister, and they'll be providing their different points of views. So stay tuned.
Bye.